Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks exciting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. Oh, and just one more thing before we go. Please consider like, commenting, and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. But now with all that out of the way, let's carry on with the video. Okay, so once we've built and primed our Myrmourn Banshees, as you can see I've just primed them here in a simple plain white, and it's going to be good for what we want to do with the techniques we're going to use a bit later on down the line. But to start off with, we're going to start off with the base, and to do that we're going to use some burnt umber here. And for the main part of the base is all the ground covering, everything like that. There are some of the bases that also have stone texture, so we just want to avoid that. We just want to be doing the ground, the earth. We want to be all doing this in the burnt umber here. And as you can see, I've made it so I can take it off the main part of the banshee and really focus on this base. Then once we have that earth all painted in, what we've been doing is coming in with some monster brown now, which is a nice light brown, and all we're going to be doing is dry brushing it over top, so it's going to catch all those nice bits of earth texture details and really help highlight the piece. So just going everywhere, and since this is our first step, it's not too much of a worry if we accidentally dry brush over some other things. Then once we've dry brushed that earth, what we're going to be doing now is moving on to some uniform grey. And the uniform grey is going to be our base for all of our stone texture. So this applies to all the bases we're doing. All the stone texture is going to be the same uniform grey, which is uniform grey is a nice blue grey, so it's going to give us a little bit of colour interest in there as well, on top of having that grey colour. And then of course we just want to paint up all the stone texture in that uniform grey. Then once that uniform grey is down, we're going to come in now with some dark sea grey, and all we're going to do is the same step we did last time. We just want to highlight it up as we did with the earth, and making sure we catch all those nice raised edges. And you can see I'm using just a pretty rough brush here to do this, a nice small one, so we're not going to accidentally get too much dry brushing over in other areas. Then once that highlight is complete, we're going to come on now with deck tan, and deck tan we're also going to be dry brushing on as a highlight as well, which is just a nice step up from our dark sea grey, more of a wider colour as well, so it's going to really help highlight those edges. So I'm more focusing on the edges this time rather than over the whole lot of the stone. Now we have the stone complete. What we're going to be doing now is moving on to some skeleton bone, and as the name says, we're going to be painting up some bone with this, and of course since we're in a graveyard they're going to be skeleton bones as well. So giving a nice overall coat to all the skulls and bits of bones you can see over all the bases. Now there is quite a lot. I believe every single base on all these miniatures in this pack all have skeletons, so make sure you pick them all out. They're hiding all over the place. Then once we have those bones all painted up, we're going to come in now with some Nocturna Shadow, which is a nice dark green. And we're going to be using this for all the vines over the miniatures bases. And as well as some of them do go up the bases onto some of the actual miniatures themselves. So make sure you have a good look all over all of the banshees, as there are a lot of vines tangling and twisting all over the place. So this part may take you a little while. And of course, I'm just coming in here with a nice fine tip brush so we can really get all the edges and follow along where all the spiraling vines are going. Then with all those vines picked down, we're going to come in now with some mephiston red. I'm going to use mephiston red for all of the flowers on the miniature. Now of course you can paint the flowers up whatever colour you want, but I'm just going to be painting them up as some nice red roses. So mephiston red is going to be a nice colour for that. And there are also a lot of, just like the skulls and skeleton bits all over the places, there are also a lot of flowers all over the place too. So don't forget to really take a look over all your miniature and try to find all those flowers. Then now once we have those flowers all picked out, we're going to come in now with some seraphim sepia. And we want to be applying the seraphim sepia to all of our bones all over the miniatures and all over these bases as we're painting up here. So giving a nice overall coat, being careful not to get it anywhere else. But at this stage it's not too big a deal because we're dealing with nice fine areas on really small bases, so an accidental little bit here or there is not going to be too noticeable, but we want to try to be as neat as we can. Then once that seraphim sepia is all dried up, we're going to come in now with some agrax earthshade. Now the agrax earthshade we're going to be applying to the rest of the base. Everywhere else that we didn't apply that seraphim sepia, so everywhere that isn't bones. So giving a nice overall coat, we want to make sure we get all over the flowers, the vines, all over the dirt area, so we can be a little bit more rough with this overall wash everywhere, and we're just avoiding those skulls and skeletons. Then once we've completed that, we can pop the miniature back on, and we're going to start off with some charred brown. And for our banshees here, we're going to be using the charred brown for the corsets that they're wearing. So all of them have these corsets on, so we can all paint these exactly the same. And just being a little bit careful not to hit anywhere where we've got that nice ghostly effect, because we want to try and avoid doing that as much as possible, because we want to save it all for the effect. So don't be afraid if you do accidentally do it, just come in and paint back over with some white to match that primer. So once we have our Banshee's corset picked out, what we're going to be doing now is coming in with some brassy brass. I'm going to be using this for some little extra bits on the Banshees. We're going to be using them on the handles of our blades. This one here has a little hourglass with her. There are some as well that have little dangling bits of jewelry and stuff on there, so we want to be just picking all of those little bits out with our brassy brass. Okay, so once we've completed all those little extra bits on the miniature, we're going to come in now with some gunmetal. And for the gunmetal, we're going to be, of course, applying it to the metal parts of the miniature. As you can see here, our Banshee has her dagger, and all of the Banshees do actually have daggers on them, so you want to make sure you go around on all those Banshees picking out the daggers. As well as that, there are some of the Banshees who have barbed fence that they are flying through, so you want to make sure you pick those out as well. As you can see, I'm just coming over here now with a second coat on this one, so we're avoiding a lot of those streak marks. And then once we've done that, we're going to move on to a fun bit. We're going to come in now and do that ghost effect. So starting off with this miniature here, we're going to use nighthaunt gloom. Now I'm going to be painting up these Banshees here in 4 different paint schemes or paint styles, to give you a variety and to see what you may want to paint up your Banshees as. So I'm not too worried about having them all match in the same in an army, but by all means, if you find a paint scheme here that you like, just go straight ahead and pick out one and paint it for all 3 of them. But I want to give you some options and show you what you can do with these nice ghostly effects. So applying the nighthaunt gloom in as thick or as thin a ratio as you want. And then once you have a ratio you're looking for, I'm going to come in now with some ivory or off-white, or any white color will do for this effect. And then I'm going to dry brush over top of it. You can see I've got a little bit of stuff on my brush, so I just want to dab that off a little bit more. And giving it a nice dry brush is going to help that ghostly effect. Now, as you can see, it's sort of giving off a chalky sort of appearance because I've got a little too much on there, and the white does chalk up a lot as well. But for me, I actually really like this chalky appearance, especially for ghost miniatures, as it gives little white particles fly and attach to other parts of the miniature, and it gives off a more ghostly looking appearance. But if it's not something you want, you could always just highlight this up in the white, slowly going up. But I quite like this chalky appearance. It gives a nice ghostly effect. And then once you've dry brushed up to where you want to, as you can see, I pretty much came in and dry brushed the whole thing back to white. But all I'm going to do now is come back in with our nighthaunt gloom, and I've just thinned it down with just a little bit of contrast medium here, so I can get it a lot thinner. And what I'm doing is coming back and applying that nighthaunt gloom to the areas where I want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm making it a little bit darker at the top of the skirt, and I'm also on the back of her cape / cloak. I'm going to be making it a lot darker along there as well, really giving off a nice different side of effect, and you can see the etherealness coming in and out. Now that we have our first Banshee done, we're going to move on to our second Banshee, and we're going to come in now with some nihilakh oxide. And the nihilakh oxide I'm going to be applying to everywhere, and I'm going to be giving this a nice heavy overall coat of nihilakh oxide. I'm not doing what I'm doing the last one. I'm not going from thick and thin in some places. I'm just giving this a full overall coat, really slathering it on, really getting that nice nihilakh oxide effect, really being pretty rough with it, and definitely making sure we get a good overall coat. And with this one as well, I also want to make sure I give a nice overall coat to the head and the cape as well. As you can see, they're sort of 2 separate bits. You've got the head and the cape sort of attached, and then you've got the skirt as well. So it gives you a lot of room if you want to switch between 2 different colors. But with this one here, I'm just going to give that nihilakh oxide over the whole thing, giving it a nice overall coat, so it's really heavily nihilakh oxide colored. Then once that nihilakh oxide's all dried up, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm coming in here with ivory, but remember, any off-white or white color will do. And I'm giving a nice heavy dry brush over the thing. Probably, I guess, more of a slight overbrush because it is a little bit wet on there, because I do want some of that white to really pop off. And I'm being just heavier in the areas where I want the white to be a little bit more, and a little bit lighter in the areas where I want that nihilakh oxide to show through. It's totally up to you how dark or light you want to go with this thing. Just want to show off how you can get that nice ethereal effect. The nihilakh oxide is really good for this too. And with that, we have our second Banshee complete, and we're going to move on to our third now. And this one here, I'm going to be using Apothecary White, and this one, I'm going to be doing two different colours on the miniature, like I said, just before you, since they're separated between the head and the back cloak and the skirt of our Banshee here, you can actually separate them into two different colours, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here with this one. I'm going to start off with the Apothecary White, just focusing in on the skirt, giving it a really good overall colour, especially since the Apothecary White is quite bluish white. We want to make sure we get it reasonably heavy on this part. Now remember, we're just applying it to the skirt for this colour scheme. Then once we have that all dried up, we're going to come in now with Magost Purple. And this is the part where we're just going to be doing the back head and the cloak. And this is going to give us a nice contrasting effect between that off-white / bluish colour with our Apothecary White and this really, really bright purple, which I think actually looks really nice. This is the first time I've used Magost Purple, and I didn't realise it was such a bright pinkish purple, so it's looking really cool, and it's going to help with the added drama and effect. And once that purple's all completely dry, we're going to do the exact same thing as we just done with the last two, as we're going to come back in with that dry brush of our ivory or off-white colour, whatever you feel is right for the situation. And again, this is totally up to you and the feel of the miniature, so just take your time, give it a dry brush, seeing how it looks after a couple of passes, seeing what you think, and then make it either darker or lighter in certain places, just depending on your mood. So it's all up to you what you want to do here with the dry brushing. And with that, we're now on to our last Banshee. And this one here I'm going to be doing a little bit different. I'm going to be making it a dark Banshee rather than all the light colours we've done. So starting off with our black Templar contrast paint, I'm going to be applying it to the miniature, giving nice overall coat, but I'm not going to be doing the entire thing. I'm not going to be going the whole way down, as you can see here. I'm just sort of going to be stopping at a point where I feel like it should naturally stop, because I don't want it to be just an entire black cloak miniature. I'm going to have a plan for an effect afterwards. I don't know how it's going to go, but we'll see how it is. But you're just choosing that area and making it as much or as little as you want. And then once you have it faded, or you have it as light as dark as you want, what we're going to do now is come in with some nihilakh oxide and thin it down with some contrast medium. And I'm just going to be applying it to all the areas over top, and it's going to give a nice nihilakh oxide effect onto the tips of all of our nice wispy areas on our cloak and on our dress. And I hope it's going to turn out really good. I haven't tried anything like this, I haven't been brave enough to. I thought it might be sort of too clashing, but it does seem to be working quite nicely. But you definitely want to make sure that that first black Templar contrast paint is completely dry before you do this, because it'll start mixing in and it'll start pulling and making grey in a lot of places. And with that, we have our 4 paint schemes done, and we're just going to finish off some little parts of the miniature. So coming back in here with some nuln oil, and all we're going to be doing is applying nuln oil wash to our nice metallic areas, really giving it overall coat so we can darken all those colours down and make them look a little bit more natural. And then once that nuln oil is completely dry, we're going to come back in with some agrax earthshade, and all we're going to be doing is going to be applying it over to the corset of our Banshees here to really get into those details and give it that realistic leather appearance that we want to have, being very, very careful not to accidentally spill the agrax earthshade onto any of the ethereal effects onto our Banshees. So being very careful. Switch to a smaller brush if you have to do this. And with all that dry and complete, there's just one little thing to do to the miniature, and that's to paint the rim around the base. Now, of course, you can paint the rim around the base to match the rest of your army, whatever color base you have, but for me, it's always just a nice simple black. I just love the color it gives off, and just keeping it nice and simple. And with all that complete, we have finally finished painting up our Myrmourn Banshees from Warhammer Age of Sigmar Games Workshop range. And I hope it's been helpful for you guys and showing you that you can paint up these Myrmourn Banshees in all sorts of colours to give off that same ghostly ethereal effect in the end, by showing you some different paint schemes and colour schemes you can use in your army. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. And whether you just enjoy me painting up some cool miniatures or you follow along and enjoy these tutorials. So with all that said, guys, I'd like to thank you once again, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.